Welcome to Level Up Tribes. Level Up Tribes provides resources to help you attain the necessary resources to level up your mind, body, and soul and realize your full potential. It is about exploring, learning, providing you with the tools from the experts for you to create a better version of yourself. I am your host, Agnes Goodwine, and welcome, Tribes. Hello, beloveds, and welcome to another episode of Level Up Tribes podcast. Before we begin the episode, I want to give you all a heads up that we had some technical difficulties, and the first 4 minutes of the show was interrupted. I will blame this one on Mercury retrograde. If you don't know what that is, well, you have to look it up. It's a real thing. We began the show with Sandra describing how her intuitive pregnancy coaching got started, and that's where the episode will pick up for you. With that being said, Sandra Jones-Keller is an intuitive pregnancy coach and certified energy healer, and she's here to talk about pregnancy over 40, intuitive communication with your baby, and how her trips abroad to sacred sites of Peru, Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Egypt called her intuitive gifts and laid the groundwork for her life's passion. Sandra has produced segments for the National Association of Television Program Executives in LA, Georgia Public Broadcasting in Atlanta, as well as other freelance projects. Sandra is also an author of 3 books, Intuitive Communication with Your Baby's Soul, 21 Lessons to Empower the New Age Kid, and How I Beat Fibroid Tumors for a Successful Pregnancy Over 40. Her story is powerful and inspiring, and I can't wait until you hear her story. Let's dive in.
I was actually 41 when I conceived, and we weren't trying. It was actually a very new relationship. We had been in a long-distance relationship for about 6 months.
Okay.
And then we were together in the same city for 3 months, and I got pregnant.
Wow.
So when I went to the doctor, I already looked like I was 3 months pregnant, so I knew something was a little off. But I was diagnosed with 2 large fibroid tumors, one at the base of my uterus, probably about the size of a grapefruit. And I didn't know this at the time. And so the prognosis for me was pretty dire. I would be bedridden for most of the pregnancy. My daughter would be born 3 months premature, and I would have a C-section. So I did have a C-section. However, I was never bedridden. And as a matter of fact, I worked part-time up until the weekend before she was born and carried her 38 weeks, and she came home with us at the end of her hospital stay.
Wow.
And I did this using intuitive two-way communication with her.
Yes. And let's go back a little bit. You mentioned when you first found out that you were pregnant and you were away, and you saw a midwife overseas.
Oh, God.
I found it really.
Oh, my God. Well, it's a funny
Be,
story.
it
It's
had
a
to be
funny
scary.
story now.
Yeah.
It's funny now. It was not funny then. Literally, as I was taking the pregnancy test, Thomas was booking our trip to Palenque, Mexico.
Yes.
We hadn't been confirmed that I was actually pregnant. I didn't assume it would be a big deal at all. So he booked our trip down to Mexico, the jungles of Mexico, mind you. At the same time, I was taking a pregnancy test. So we go down there. I was probably, I don't know, God, it was less than 2 months pregnant at this time. And so we went down there, and I was feeling the best that I had felt like since I was pregnant. I was just really uncomfortable and just did not feel well. So I love traveling. We get down to the jungles of Mexico. I'm feeling really good for the first time in weeks. And then we took like an overnight excursion to the beach. So I was playing in the water and everything. And then we had to go back to the jungle, and I started spotting. Oh, wow. And so mind you, we're in Palenque, Mexico, which is the jungles of Mexico. So there's not a clinic, there aren't hospitals around or anything. And we were getting ready to come back to the States. And I knew we had, I think, I don't know, a 6-hour, we had like a 2 or 3 hour bus ride and then a 6-hour flight to get back to the States. And so I was spotting, and I started getting really nervous. And I said, I want to get checked out before we make this journey home.
Yes.
And so we had met another woman, and she's like, oh, well, I know this woman who's sort of a midlife a midwife, but not really. She's had 6 kids of her own. Still do. So we go we're like, well, where is she? We're desperate at this point. So we go to the restaurant where she works, and we go to the back of the restaurant, and she like, she speaks only Spanish and we speak English. And so I'm like trying to explain with a lot of hand gestures what my problem is. And she understands a few words. So she points to a mattress, and we pull out the mattress. I'm like, oh my God, this is how desperate I am. And so she has me lay down, and she starts digging into my stomach. And she's like, okay, the baby's fine. You're fine. And then she tries to tell me that I'm like much farther along. I'm like, no, but I couldn't communicate the fibroids.
Yes.
But she gave me the okay. And at that point, that was good enough. And we came home, and I was fine. Had a safe journey home.
Wow, what an experience.
Yes.
And so I learned that you started communicating, your first communication with your daughter was 3 months pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, about
And
3 months.
yes, 3 months. Can you share that experience with
Oh God, it was my husband's fault, really. So we were at a spiritual conference in Las Vegas. Was part of a spiritual group that we were with. And for the last day, he did not tell me this before we went. He had checked us out of our hotel room, and we were going to stay with a friend of his who was a single guy. I'm pregnant. I'm very uncomfortable. And the last thing I wanted to do was stay in the room with a single guy. So we were living in Los Angeles, and, I knew a lot of people. I said, well, I'm going to catch a ride home. I'd rather go home than, and he's like, out of the blue, he's like, well, did you ask the baby what it wanted to do? I'm like, well, why would I do that? He's like, well, did you ask? I was like, no. So I figured I would just, humor him. So I went away, I got quiet, I kind of went into meditation. And I just kind of tuned in, and I said, and we didn't know her name, or if it was a boy or girl at this time. And I just said, do you want to go home with me or stay here with Daddy? And she said, I heard a very clear voice in my head say, I want to stay here with my daddy.
Wow.
And I was like, oh man. And so I asked again, I'm like, well, are you sure you want to stay in Vegas, or do you want to go home with me? She's like, I want to stay here with my daddy. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And so I knew this was her voice, because one, I had my own agenda. I wanted to go home, and I thought for sure it would be like, oh yeah, let's go home.
Right.
And two, she said, my daddy.
Mm.
And so I said, okay, whatever. So I went back to Thomas and said, okay, we're staying.
Yes.
And so that was the first time that I actually had intuitive two-way communication, where I spoke to her and I heard her speak back to me. Other than that, I had been, rubbing my belly and talking to her and loving her, but I had never heard her voice in that way.
Before that happened, were you already intuitive at that point?
Yes, I've been doing energy work, energy healing since like the early 90s.
Okay.
So over 20 years. So it was natural for me to be intuitive, to work with energy. I had never done that before. But
Okay.
because I'm comfortable with energy work, and I know that there's, a bigger realm out there, then when I got the answer, it wasn't even a question for me. It was like, got it.
That's it.
So because I knew it was her voice, then that was the beginning of a partnership. And she literally helped me get through that difficult pregnancy.
That's a beautiful story.
Yeah, and I didn't know it was possible, and nor had I ever even considered it
Yes.
until my husband asked me that question. And, I think looking back, it was almost a lifesaver. Because I would go to the doctor's office and they would terrify me. It would be like stuff like, well, she's going to be born 3 months. She's going to be born 3 months premature,
Yeah.
because your uterus can only stretch so much and you're almost there.
Yes.
Or it was like, we can't find her heartbeat.
Yeah.
Or it was, I think your kidneys enlarged because of the pregnancy.
Yes.
So it was literally one thing after another. And oftentimes I would leave the doctor's office crying, because it was very emotional and upsetting.
Yeah.
But I would go home and I would tune in to her. And I would ask her, it's like, how are you doing? What do you need? And, it was always, Mom, I'm fine. Take care of yourself. And
Yes.
she had literally carved out a space in my belly somewhere where they weren't looking for her heartbeat. And she was like, just hanging out. It's like, Mom, I'm fine. Take care of yourself. So because I knew she was okay, I then had the strength and courage to do what I needed to do to take care of myself. And
Yeah.
I asked her at one point, I said, I am willing to do whatever it takes so that you are not in that hospital for 3 months. What do you need? I'm
Okay.
like, do I need to be bedridden? It was like, no.
Yes.
She's like, I'm fine. Take care of yourself. So I had to start tuning into my body and follow those cues and those impulses.
Yes.
But God, she was always so strong and so clear and just so dynamic. It was
Yes.
like, Mom, I'm fine.
I got this.
Yeah, and so it just like gave me a level of confidence and certainty from within that I could not have had
Yes.
um, going through that experience.
Did you find out that you had fibroids after you got pregnant?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We weren't trying. Like I said, it was a new relationship, and I could tell something was off because I was like big. I'm like, okay, I'm only a couple weeks late with my cycle, but why am I so big? I looked like I was probably 3 months pregnant. And
Wow.
so when I went to the doctor, they looked at me and they're like, well, you're either farther along than you think or you have fibroids. So it turns out I had fibroids. And they're like, well, were you on fertility drugs? I'm like, no. They're like, well, you shouldn't be pregnant,
Wow.
given the size and location. And that's not even considering my age. I was 41.
Yeah.
So given the size and location, according to the doctors, I should not have been pregnant. But what they didn't know was that this was a spiritual agreement, and there were bigger things going on than the medical profession
Yes.
could determine.
Yes. And let's talk about a little bit because I know fibroids is huge in women now. And I used to suffer from fibroids as well. So when I read a little bit about your regimen, I'm like, oh, that's how, because I got rid of mine naturally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Really? Good for you, girl.
Yes. And it was through the castor oil heating pads. And
Oh,
yes,
that's awesome.
I
That's
know.
awesome.
I know,
Yeah.
and it works, because I'm 46 and, the doctors were like, oh, hysterectomy,
Yep.
so you won't suffer from pain anymore. And I'm like, well,
Yep.
I don't want to get rid of my organs.
Yeah.
And
That's
so,
it. I know. And the thing is, my doctor said that to me with such certainty. It
yes.
was like, well, you're going to have a hysterectomy. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, your fibroids and they're so big and da 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 da. Because they just were concerned with getting my daughter out safely, they didn't do anything about the fibroids.
Okay.
They really had to focus on just getting her out safely. And so for a year after the birth, I worked on shrinking the fibroids to the point where they weren't a problem. So I have not gotten rid of mine completely, but
Yeah.
they have not been a problem at all. And when I went back to the doctor, like, I don't know, a few months after, he's like, oh, well, they've gone down. But I'm like, yep, they sure
Yeah.
have.
Yes, they do. And like I said, the castor oil packs, they work a lot. Black seed oil. Have you heard of
Okay.
black seed oil?
I've heard of it. I haven't used it.
Yes, that really helped me. And so I went back and got an ultrasound and that sucker was gone. I'm like, yep.
Oh, so did you take it as a peel or did you insert it?
No, you just drink it. It's a liquid.
Oh,
It
okay.
tastes, I mean, it doesn't taste great, but
Right.
they say that everything bitter is good for your body.
Okay.
And so it helped. And I still do it once in a while because it's just
Right.
overall
Good
it's
for
good for
you.
your health. But yeah, and so I try to tell my friends, go the natural pathway instead of
Yeah.
just having your doctor
Yeah.
go in and remove your organs.
I know.
There's other
I
ways of doing it.
Yeah, I know, but people get scared, and if you don't have anything to fall back on in terms of homeopathic or a spiritual practice, then it's easy to get caught up in the medical profession.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I had done acupuncture and homeopathy prior to that. So I had alternatives. But I'll tell you this, I am so thankful for Western medicine, and I'm so thankful for the excellent surgeon that I had
Yes.
to actually, get my daughter out safely.
Yeah.
So I created a partnership with all of them, and you use whatever you can.
True.
So I was a little frustrated having to be so immersed in Western medicine, but man, I was thankful.
I know.
Yeah.
So that journey took you into working with parents to connect with their children
hmm
before conception. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Things in my life are not planned, I would say, because I could not, you couldn't, 15, 20 years ago, you couldn't have told me this is what I would be doing. So that actually came out of another conversation I had. So we were in Hawaii, and I was talking to a couple who was pregnant at the time, and I was telling them how I had, you know, talked to my daughter while I was pregnant, and had intuitive two-way communication.
Mhm.
And they're looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, well, what? Doesn't everyone do that? And they're
Yeah.
like, no. I was like, oh, wow, really? Because it was like, it didn't occur to me that other people didn't do it.
Mm.
And so literally from that conversation, my intuitive pregnancy coaching work emerged,
Yeah.
because I realized that I wanted to share this with people, and I wanted to assist people. I mean, if you are in touch with your unborn child,
Yes.
you know how much confidence and security that gives you, because you're no longer looking to outside sources to reinforce your own intuition or your own practices or anything.
Yeah.
When you hear that your baby is okay directly from the source,
Yeah.
that gives you an incredible amount of strength and purpose, unlike anything else. And so I wanted to just share this information. That's really why I wrote the book, Intuitive Communication with Your Baby's Soul, so that women and men use it, but mostly women would have access to this information.
Yes.
So the two books are different and the same. Intuitive Communication with Your Baby's Soul has different tools and techniques to actually develop intuitive communication. And the Fibroids book is really more of my personal journey. So it's sort of like a short ebook, or you can get it in a paperback, but that's really my journey of how I navigated it and created a partnership with my daughter and my body.
Yes. I mean, they're both interconnected. I mean, if you
Yeah,
don't know about your body and your
yeah,
mental state, then how can you communicate with your
yeah,
unborn child? So,
absolutely.
yes.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that you mentioned in the book is that a baby isn't just about biology, it is a spiritual agreement.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that so much. And a lot of people, they don't like you said earlier, some people are just not ready to receive that type of statement.
Oh, yeah.
But
Oh,
for those that have never heard that being mentioned, that agreement with your unborn child, can you touch on that a little bit further?
oh, absolutely. My daughter can never, ever say to me, well, I didn't ask to be born. It's like, not only did you ask to be born, but, we had a whole planning session, and you waited for Thomas to come into my life, because I was married before Thomas, and we were together for 10 years, married for 8, and I never got pregnant. So
Wow.
not only did you wait, this whole thing was planned out, and you came through in spite of my fibroid tumors. And
Mm,
so the fetus is the baby in your belly, but what animates it and gives it life is a spirit.
yes.
Without the spirit, there just is no pregnancy. There's no baby. Otherwise, it's just a physical body. It's just a physical presence.
Yes.
Um, and so, I believe that these are just all contracts and all agreements. And I know that, our family definitely had one, my husband, my daughter, and myself. There's definitely agreement to bring her through. And she waited for the environment and the circumstances that she needed for her spiritual development, evolution, and ascension.
Yes.
And, and I look at her and Thomas together and how they interact and their connection. And I think about my past relationship, my first marriage, and we weren't on a spiritual path. We didn't have so much in agreement and in alignment. And so she waited for what she needed.
Mm.
And so I'm finding that, these babies, a lot of these old souls that are coming in are very specific and very clear about what they need in order to incarnate.
Yeah.
And they're not interested in dealing with a lot of drama, a lot of, their parents' own stuff. And so they're wanting a lot of that to be cleaned up, and they're waiting for the unique partnerships too of the people to come together.
Yes.
And I like to compare it to a medium in your baby. People are comfortable and they're familiar with mediums, and mediums are people who speak with a deceased relative or loved one.
Yeah.
So why is it that a medium can speak to a deceased relative? Because they're communicating with their spirit.
Mm.
So once a person leaves their body, they go back into spirit form. So they're still there, they're just not in the physical realm. Well, doesn't it make sense that a baby is a spiritual being just coming in? So instead of going out, the baby's coming in. It's still a spiritual being. It's still, maybe a master, but it's this divine intelligence that you can communicate with.
What would you say about, unfortunately, for parents that suffer from miscarriages? From a spiritual standpoint, what has been your experience with clients or friends or when they experience a miscarriage?
Well, there's a lot of hurt and there's a lot of guilt, especially on the part of the mother. And the first thing that I tell them is it's not your fault.
Yeah.
You've done nothing wrong. And so just try to get them grounded in that, because there's a huge conversation. And if I had done X, Y, or Z differently, so I try to just help them understand that there's a bigger picture going on. In our society, miscarriages have been about a chromosomal abnormality or chemical pregnancy or something, without consideration that this is a spiritual agreement. And sometimes if the fetus changes its mind,
Yeah.
and I've done several miscarriage readings, and the first thing that the baby wants the parents to know is that they're okay.
Yes.
They love them. They're sorry that they're hurting.
Yes.
This was not about causing them pain.
Yes.
That's like usually the first message that comes in. It's like, I'm sorry, I don't want you to suffer. And so once it's usually the mother, once the mother hears that, there's already a level of healing that takes place.
Yeah.
And then, we go deeper. And I remember one couple had been trying for a few years. It was a new marriage. The woman already had a couple kids, and it was a new marriage. And what the spirit said was that they were busy trying to start a new business and really didn't have time.
Mm.
There was not agreement amongst the other kids. So the other kids really didn't want a new baby, and they didn't want to be controlled.
Wow.
And so that was one. And then another one, was interesting. And I can talk about this one because I did a video on it. A woman had a miscarriage, and I saw a picture. I sometimes I see pictures.
Okay.
And so I drew it out. And so what it looked like was two pie charts. So the first pie chart was probably divided into 6 or 7 different pieces. It was the husband, 1 kid, 2 kids, 3 kids. It was her job and something else. So that was like her pie chart. And then the other baby, it was the whole pie chart.
Wow.
And so what I said was, this baby it's kind of on the fence, because it needs a lot of attention. It needs a lot. And
Oh.
it's not sure that it's going to get it with you. I mean, and I showed her the pie charts, and she ended up miscarrying. Another one I did, the energy when I looked at the womb, it looked like a big bowling ball. It was just this dark, dense energy. So there wasn't room in there to even carry a baby.
Yes.
So there's a lot of different things. And one, like the woman, so the picture that I got was the woman had a split mind about being a mother and working.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the gap was so big, it was like from Los Angeles to New York, that kind of gap.
Yes.
And so then the next step is, well, how do you close that gap? You know, how do you start getting clear on what it is that you want? Because, you know, these babies aren't coming here for our pleasure because we want to be moms and parents. You know, they have their own agendas, they have their own curriculums. And so a lot of them are very clear about what they need.
Yes.
And, you know, so they're waiting for that and they're sending messages and they're, you know, wanting the parents to get it cleaned up. And sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't.
Right. What I hear you say is for those that I have a friend that has had a few, and she's taken that in where it has caused depression
Mm-hmm.
and anxiety. And so when I talk to her, I try to talk to her in regards to like the spiritual side and
Mm-hmm.
say, don't take it so personal because it might not, like you said, the baby has, these are souls that are coming in that have their own journey.
Yeah.
And so if you understand that, you can say, you know what, it just wasn't meant this time.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult topic because, everybody kind of handles
Oh
things
yeah.
differently. And so I'm glad that you mentioned and
Yeah,
explained.
it's a very difficult topic, but you
Yeah.
know, most, like, you know, in the readings that I've done, it's never been about, oh, the mother did something wrong. It's like if you hadn't exercised or eaten that thing.
Yeah.
It's never been that kind of thing. It's all about, well, you know, I'm kind of hanging out here, the spirit, you know, I'm kind of hanging out here waiting. I'm not sure, you know, the environment is not right. I mean, I got divorced at 36, and I thought that was the end of my dreams of becoming a mother. It wasn't, you know, something that I thought would ever happen. And so I was very disappointed
Yeah.
that I hadn't had a baby. But now looking back, I can just see how everything lined up and who I needed to be the mother for my daughter.
Yeah.
I'm a very different person now.
Yeah.
And so I had to clean up a lot of stuff, and my husband had to clean up a lot of his own stuff so that she could come in. She's not interested in dealing with a lot of drama, dysfunction, you know, any of that.
Yeah.
You know, these kids coming in, you know, they need our love, support, and our guidance. They don't need us trying to plan out their lives. They don't need us figuring out everything for them. You know, it's like we're the way showers and we hold the space.
Yes.
And but they're definitely not our possessions, and they don't want to be controlled.
That is true.
And so that's where I see like the power struggles coming in and stuff, where the parent has their agenda for the kid and the kid is like not interested.
Yeah.
And so then they start battling.
Yes. That's an interesting topic. Let's delve into that a little bit more. We have a lot of helicopter parenting styles out
Mm-hmm.
there. For parents that are struggling with that relationship with, because the kids nowadays, they're so different.
Yeah.
They're a
Yeah.
different generation than ever before. If you're having relationship problems with your children, how can you shift that mindset as a parent to say, you know what, let them decide for themselves? Like,
Yeah. Well, you know, it's always an interesting dilemma.
yeah.
And I tell you, whenever I try to get into a power struggle with my daughter, I'm the one that usually ends up frustrated.
Yeah.
You know, because like what I ask people when, you know, I do new age kid parenting support. And so what I ask them is like, what is your come from? Like, what is this about? So let me give you an example of me losing a power struggle with my daughter.
Yeah.
And so she was probably, God, oh, maybe 7 or 8 at the time. Like I said, she's always been very clear. And so I had gone out and I bought her this big winter coat, like a fluff. We lived in Atlanta at the time, and it was cold. I'm like, oh, you need a coat. So I went out and bought her this big purple fluffy coat thing. And so a couple weeks later, I saw that Macy's was having a sale on ski jackets for $25. And I'm like, oh, come on, honey, let's go to Macy's. I'm going to get you a coat. So she's, like I said, 7 or 8. And she says very clearly, she's like, I don't need a coat. I need boots. Oh, well, come on, let's go down to the mall. And I loved going down to Lenox Square. And I know you're from Atlanta.
Yes.
And so we lived, on the, what side was that? I guess the east side. I don't know. We lived south. And so I loved going up to Lenox Square and hanging out. And so I'm like, oh, let's go have lunch and we can get you a coat. I don't need another coat. You just got me one. I need boots. So she says this, right? But I am like running my own agenda because $25 for a Macy's nice ski jacket for $100 jacket sounds like a really good deal. So we go up to Macy's in Lenox Square, which is a really nice Macy's. And we're looking for these coats, but the girls section happens to be next to the toy department. And so I'm looking for coats and stuff. And, they've got a lot to choose from, and they're beautiful. And like I said, they're only $25. And so I turn around, I'm like, well, where did she go? And she's over in the toy section. And I said, oh, do you like these? And you know how kids kind of like roll up their nose and it's like that kind of snarl? She's like, no. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, why aren't you looking for coats? She's like, eh. And so then I'm going back and looking for coats, and she half-heartedly looks, and then I turn around, she's back in the toy section. So I'm getting frustrated. I'm like, okay, why do they have the toy department next to the kids, clothes? So I'm getting frustrated. She's just doing her thing. I'm like, okay, well, can you try this on? So she tries it on. It was like, she didn't like anything. And then I tried to do the mom thing of, well, if you're not gonna cooperate, then we're just gonna leave.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So I, huffed and puffed and hung these coats up, trying to have major attitude and stuff. And so we're walking up the escalator. I'm like, oh my goodness, she told me she didn't want a coat. So I turned around, I looked at her, I'm like, you said you didn't want a coat. She's like, yep. I'm like, oh, okay, let's go get you some boots. She's like, okay.
Wow.
And so I was running my own agenda.
Yeah.
She said very clearly that she didn't want or need another coat.
Right.
But, I was off into my own world because I saw a bargain.
Right.
And so that's kind of a minor, funny example of a power struggle. But she was very clear. And so I was trying to force her to get something she was not interested in, she didn't want, and according to her, she didn't need.
Yes.
So it's stuff like that. And so for me, when I'm finding that she's being resistant or uncooperative, then I look to see if I'm running my own agenda. And usually I am.
Yes. Yes.
There are times when it's like, if it's something important, it's like, okay, this needs to happen.
Right.
But if it's not, and she's really being resistant,
right.
If I can step back, then I can usually see where she's already communicated really clearly what she did or didn't want.
Right.
And I'll take another example. So she was probably 2 or 3 at the time. And I used to, meditate every morning. And so she would come in and sit, kind of in the little baby Zen position, like she was meditating. She really wasn't, but, I was like, oh, man, she's meditating with me. This is so cool, whatever. And so then, I don't know, I at one time I asked, oh, Mecca, you want to come meditate? She's like, no, like 2 or 3, right? No. I'm like, okay. I asked her again, Mecca, do you want to come meditate? No. And I was like, oh, so I was starting to take it personally, like, wow, she's rejecting my spiritual practices. She's not interested in, my religion or spirituality. And before I made a big thing about it, though, I went into meditation and I said, okay, please bring me clarity on this. And the message that I got was, leave her alone. You meditate to feel your God self, to connect. She's already connected.
Wow.
Leave her alone. So from that moment on, just left her alone.
That's
And
beautiful.
so, so maybe you're a parent and you practice a certain religion
Yes.
and you're trying to get your kids to be interested or follow, and maybe they're just not interested.
Yeah.
And so it's not a rejection of you per se, it's like they're feeling God inside.
Right.
And so all of these practices that we have done and do to feel connected, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, as my daughter says, I already feel connected. I don't need to go through all of those steps to
Yes.
get to God.
Yes. That's
So
true.
that was a very long answer to your question about what I tell parents. Do your own work.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And, we come from an authoritative,
Mhm.
parenting style, but, like I said, kids are smarter than what we think. And when we communicate, that one-on-one and ask them, what do you want? What are you
Mhm.
thinking? We tend to not really ask questions to our
Yep.
children. And that's where a lot of problems kind of come in, and a lot of conflicts.
Yes. I was talking to someone just recently, and they were thinking about putting their kid in daycare.
Mm,
And I said, well, did you ask them how they feel about that? And I was like, no. I'm like, well, ask. Create a partnership.
yes.
Ask them. So if they're like in on it and involved, it's a whole different thing than being told this is what's happening with your life.
Yes.
Like, well, just ask
Yes.
them.
Right.
And if you need to have this thing happen, then you work it out so that it works for both of you,
Yes.
not just you.
100%. So let's talk about meditation. You mentioned meditation a lot because you meditate a lot, obviously. And so let's talk about meditation and going back to the unborn child.
Mhm.
What tips can you tell us when you're a parent and you're trying to conceive?
God, meditation has shifted for me over the years. There have been times in my life where I've sat down and meditated for an hour every day. And there are times when I've meditated for 5 minutes. And now for me, my practice is more of a walking meditation,
Okay.
because before it used to be, now I'm meditating and now I'm in the world,
Mm,
but I've integrated it
okay.
so that I am always talking to spirit.
Mm,
Whether I am on the phone with you,
yes.
whether I am doing my walk, and whether I am doing something else. And so for me, meditation is simply about connecting. So for someone who maybe hasn't meditated, I have a guided meditation in the intuitive communication book. But it's really about quieting the mind. Meditation is about going within because there are so many distractions and so many external things. So you want to quiet your mind. You want to start listening to and feeling your breath.
Mm,
Meditation helps you connect with your third eye, which is your intuitive center. It helps you to open your heart,
mm,
and it helps you to hear your divine guidance, and so that you can then actually hear the voice of the spirit that may be trying to communicate with you.
yes.
Is there one that's better than another? If you can be just quiet and still, and it's better if you can meditate 5 or 10 minutes a day versus an hour a week.
Okay.
The consistency, your mind and your body starts looking forward to. If you say, okay, I'm going to meditate every day at 7:30 for 10 minutes, then
Okay.
that consistency is just like going to the gym. Once you start doing it, you miss it. So you want to build the consistency, and you want to start building your intuitive muscles so that you're trusting that gut feeling, that mother's instinct, and you're following it and you're listening to it and you know what it is.
Okay.
Because intuition will like just drop in sometimes. Like
Yeah.
the ego man will tap on your shoulder and whisper in your ear. But
Yes.
intuition, oftentimes it'll just drop in like a flash and then it's gone.
Yeah.
And so you want to be able to capture those flashes. It's like, whoa, okay, that was spirit. That was my higher self. That was my intuition trying to tell me something.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about a little bit more about the new age kid parents and support group that you have and what that entails.
Well, I had this vision. It's like if you build it, they will come. They haven't all come yet. But I created a Facebook page
Okay.
based on my book, 21 Lessons to Empower the New Age Kid. And so ideally, it was for like-minded parents to come and talk about these paradigm shifting principles, like, asking your kid, tapping into your intuition. But what I'm finding is that I'm doing more new age kid parenting support with parents one-on-one than the group.
Okay.
And really that's, people will come to me and it's like, well, I'm having this problem with my kid, da 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 da. And so I let people talk and everything. It always comes back to you. It always comes back to me. So we will, talk about the kid a little bit, and then it's like, okay, well, what's going on with you?
Okay.
Where, what is this kid mirroring back to you? What, that kind of thing. And as the parent is cleaning up their stuff, the kid settles down.
Wow.
It's actually quite amazing. So say, for example, you have a mom that is anxious, like walks around just anxious about everything. So the kid may have chronic stomach aches, or the kid may be acting out in other ways. And once the mom starts calming down, then the kid can be okay. And I mean, gosh, I remember my daughter developed these stomach aches, and I always use homeopathy and energy work and stuff, and so it got to the point where almost everything she ate upset her stomach. And I'm like, oh man, do we need to take her to the doctor? What's going on? And then once I got out of the worldly stuff, I had to say, okay, what's going on in the house?
Okay.
So 3 months prior, my dad had passed away from cancer. And then recently, at this point, my husband had a mole, and it was cancerous. It was melanoma, which is the most aggressive form of skin cancer.
Yeah.
And because my dad had passed away, I was probably more scared than I would have been. But I was internalizing it. It's like, let me, I'll act like everything's okay in front of her, that kind of thing. But really inside, I was terrified. And so I looked up Louise Hays, which is like my go-to of what was stomach aches. And stomach ache was dread, not being able to process. And as soon as I saw that, it was like, okay, I know what's going on with my daughter. Wow. And so I talked to her and said, this is what's going on with daddy. And, we've been afraid. And we didn't realize how afraid we were until, we saw your stomach aches. Yeah. And so I started doing, my own forgiveness work. And, my husband started doing his own forgiveness work. But it really, and it got better, but it really wasn't until we got the all clear that he was fine. And that was after the surgery, after all of that. Yeah. And it was all fine. And it was like I could feel my insides relax and her stomach aches went away. Wow. So the kids are they're linked to us. They feel us. And so when there's a lot of chaos going on in the house, when there's anxiousness, when there's fear, then the kids don't know how to process this, and they may not even know what it is. They just feel that energy. Like my daughter didn't know what melanoma was. This was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. Okay. So she didn't understand what melanoma was or skin cancer or any of that. But what she understood and felt was the fear that was coming from us. Wow. And she couldn't have verbalized that. Like she didn't know. All she knew was all of a sudden she just had stomach ache after stomach ache. Yeah. And like I said, because I do energy work and because we're both on our spiritual path, then we had to say, okay, let's start dealing with this fear. It's gotten like we're really afraid. Yes, that's beautiful.
That's beautiful because you were self-aware, and you knew what you needed to do,
Yeah. And so keep in mind though, that she had these stomach aches for a couple of weeks. Okay. So yes, we have the information. Yes, we're self-aware, but we still get caught up in the world. I still get caught up in the world,
Yeah.
because I'm trying to process my own fear
True.
and, and protect her and all that stuff. And it wasn't until I started thinking about taking her to the doctor that I said, wait a minute, let me go inside to see what's going on.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why, to me, it's so important to have some kind of spiritual foundation, some kind of toolbox to pull from when life happens, because life happens.
True.
And so, but I've got a whole bank full of deposits in my spiritual toolbox that I then pull from when life happens.
Yes.
When I'm going through a difficult pregnancy, when my father passed away, when my husband was diagnosed with melanoma, I have that toolbox, that bank to pull from,
Yes.
so that, it's not as bad as it could be.
Yes. A question that I always ask my healers is how do you find self-care for yourself?
What do you mean, how do I find it? Like, what do you mean?
What are your tools to find, as a healer, you're healing everybody else.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
What is your self-care tools for yourself to stay grounded and recharged?
Yeah, well, I go to a weekly group meditation,
Okay.
which brings in a lot of light. I take salt baths. Actually, I just took one this morning.
Oh,
I
nice.
do like a salt bath, and I put some lavender in it and Epsom salt and sea salt, because that cleanses and purifies your energy field. I go for a walk. I try to walk every day to move the energy. I do a regular call with a friend of mine who's an energy healer. So we do an exchange.
Okay.
I go to a holistic chiropractor like once a month to help keep me in alignment.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, I do pressure point. Like if I feel something coming on, I do pressure point work. I run my energy. I run colors. I take my homeopathic stuff. But, as an energy worker, I'm very sensitive.
Yeah.
I'm very sensitive to the new moon, to the full moon, to, the eclipses. So, and sometimes, like, I'll be walking around, I'm like, God, what is this feeling? And then, like, a friend of mine will remind me, it's like, remember that sometimes you're just even feeling mass consciousness. Like when maybe something happens and there's a lot of fear that comes up.
Yeah.
Because like, God, feels so weird. What is this?
Yeah.
And so I just have to ground myself. I have to run my energy, do my energy work on myself.
Yeah.
And like I said, I do an exchange with a friend of mine, and we've been doing that for, God, 15, 20 years back. Sometimes weekly, we've done it weekly, and, sometimes we do it monthly.
Okay.
But that's crucial for me.
Yes. Yesterday, I've been doing pretty good. I'm an empath, and so I feel your energy when people are close to me. But I have a teacher, Patricia Federico, and so she has taught me over the years, how to kind of protect yourself and shield yourself when you're communicating with people. But yesterday, I had someone talk to me, and she approached me, and she was very upset. But what she was expressing to me was totally opposite of what I knew internally she was feeling. And so I asked her a question. I'm like, "Are you okay?" She was like, "Oh, why do you ask?" So then everything spilled out. But then when she left, it was like I felt so heavy.
Yeah.
I felt so heavy, and then I was like upset. And I had to go outside, literally, like just take a little walk and let me just like cleanse myself from it, because it's like it attaches to you.
Yeah. It's like, even if you, depending on the weather, even if you like go outside and put your feet in grass and let Mother Earth give you, that'll help drain that energy. Or if you're by the beach, go to the beach. I remember, God, just recently, I was at the airport, and I was standing there just waiting, to get my mom's bag. And I felt this wave of awfulness. And I turned, and it was like I could not stand next to this person. I mean, I literally, it was like I was looking the other way and I just felt this wave and I
Yeah.
had to move
Yes.
because I am so sensitive.
Yeah.
And then, I tried, I tried to send them light, but I was more, to be honest, concerned with grounding myself, uh, grounding myself and putting up my kind of energy shield and then sending them some light.
Yes.
Because, man, I don't know what was going on, but they were having a funky time.
I know.
And it was radiating off of them.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah. With that being said, those that are listening, if sometimes, you feel this heaviness, kind of be like, okay, is this mine to keep or
Yeah.
and let it go?
Yeah. Just like really, like just see a golden sun coming in through the top of your head and just purifying yourself. Or like see a rain shower. Or like I said, go in nature. Nature will just give you a healing, or put your feet on the grass, your bare feet on the grass. All those things just help move that energy out.
Yeah.
And speaking of energy, what I have been trying to do, the last several years is relating to things in my body as energy versus a sickness or cold or flu or something. I'll say I don't feel well versus saying, oh, I think I have the flu. Because the minute I say I think I have the flu, then there's a certain protocol that goes with that. There's a certain duration that goes with that, and there's all these beliefs.
Yeah.
And I was like, so Tuesday I like woke up and man, or one day this week, it was like I did not feel well. I had a headache, I had a stomach ache, and it was just like awful. And I'm like, okay, I don't feel well. What do I need to do? But I related to it as energy being stuck versus I'm sick.
Wow.
Because then I can work on the points. So I did my pressure points and my back and, all of this stuff to move the energy out. And my husband like looked at me, as I was laying on the bathroom floor.
Yeah.
He's like, oh my God, are you all right? And I'm like, yeah, By that evening, I was better. The next day I was up, fine. Because the energy had moved out because I didn't want to get attached to it being the flu or whatever. And so I share that with people to say, don't go around claiming things because then there's a certain protocol that goes with that.
That's true.
Okay, it's going to take 5 days. It's going to take 7 days to clear. I'm going to feel like this, and all these things are going to happen. Well, it doesn't have to be like that. It's like, okay, I have energy stuck in my body. Okay, where's the pressure point that's going to help me release that? Body, what is it that you need to move this energy out? It's a whole different way of relating to it so that you don't have to, have this long duration of something.
That's true. And it's interesting you said that because on my notes, I forgot to ask you this earlier.
Oh, okay.
In the book, you speak about Louise Hays, Heal Your Body book, where she says that fibroid tumors arise from a nursing, a hurt from a partner, a blow to the feminine ego.
Yep.
Oh my God, I read that little piece and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So it's energy.
Yeah.
Right?
All sickness is energy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but and so for me, what I did for that year, I mean, and I still have my fibroids. I didn't get rid of them, but I like shrunk them to, so that they weren't a problem.
Yeah.
But I had to look at the pain that I was holding on to.
Yeah.
The pain from my failed marriage, the pain from not having gotten pregnant and all the things that happened. That was a huge blow to my feminine ego.
Yeah.
And so as I worked with that energy, forgiving myself, forgiving, the things that happened, forgiving the disappointment, the frustration, then that energy can start releasing. Because because if all illness is, starts with a thought form, then if you don't deal with that thought form and you get the illness cut out, it's got to manifest someplace else in your body.
True.
So it's about a whole body healing. It's mind, body, and spirit. So
Yeah.
I was working physically on the fibroids with the castor oil packs. I was doing my meditation, and then I had to like deal with my emotional stuff that I was holding on to that caused the fibroids in the first place.
Wow. I'm actually going to go out this weekend and get that book.
Oh yeah, it's pretty amazing. Mine is like falling apart. I've had mine since 1991.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was that.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I
awesome.
go, whenever something comes up, I go, like when my daughter doesn't feel well or my husband doesn't feel well, or I don't feel well. Yeah, I'll go look and see like what's the root cause of it, and then kind of meditate on that and see what spirit has for me to look at.
Yeah. So what's next for you? You have 3 books, already. Any new books coming in the
Yes.
future? Really?
Yeah, I've been working on it. It's been a work in progress, and it's a fun parenting book, but it's not a how-to parenting book. It's sharing the stories of how I've dealt with things. And
Okay.
so it's like a, kind of a tips book, sort of like the example I gave with the coat,
Yes.
wanting to get Mecca a coat, and what I saw out of that. So it's stories like that.
Okay.
But it's, I don't know when that one's going to be done. It's like I'm working on it. And then, God, it's like I never know what's going to come up. You couldn't have told me I would be doing intuitive pregnancy coaching.
Yeah.
So, whatever spirit has for me, sometimes I come along willingly, sometimes not, but I always end up there. So I have no idea what's next.
Well, it's interesting you say it that way because when I interview your husband Thomas, he said the same thing. Because I told him, I said, I need to know like what's going to happen next, and he said, you know what? Sometimes it's best to leave room for spirit.
Yeah.
You
Or
know.
you can or you can't, but spirit is going to have its way, really. It's just, I can go kicking and screaming, or
Yeah.
I can just, enjoy life along the way.
True.
But because my whole life is about my spiritual evolution and ascension, then ultimately I am going to listen,
Yeah.
because that's why I'm here. That's what I have, this is my life's work. This is my passion. So ultimately I am going to listen. So that's why I have no idea. I couldn't have told you I'd be doing this.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I
Yeah.
love it. I love to hear. This is why this platform is here because I'm always excited to learn how people just find their path, and
Yeah.
it,
What are you interested in?
with me.
Yeah.
Well, right now, well, community and relationships and people, that's like my main platform.
Hmm.
And so I started the podcast to learn about people and their life and their mindset and how they shifted from not knowing to knowing their path.
Hmm.
And so this is what Spirit gave me actually
Hmm.
last year. And I was really afraid to start. And I've met some amazing people, including yourself and your
Oh,
husband, along the way. And so right now I'm actually doing yoga teacher training. I just
awesome.
started that. Yeah. And I think that's gonna connect to the podcast and the platform. So I'm taking the advice of my healers and my spiritual coaches and say, you know what, just go with the flow.
Yeah, you can go with the flow or not, but it's like how much do you want to struggle?
True.
Because it's like, oh man, what you're doing is so valuable. And just your energy and your sweetness.
Thank you.
And so just know that it's all working out for you, and and it's going to be better than you could even imagine.
Oh, thank you.
And that's the thing. That's what I have found with life. It's like I ask for, this much, and then what spirit brings me is so much bigger and
Yeah.
so much more fulfilling and rewarding.
Yes.
You
I'm
know? So
looking
yeah.
forward to meeting you.
Oh, I
And
know.
yes, I can't wait. He blew my mind when he told me that you guys lived in East Point.
Yeah, we
Super
were down in,
neighbors.
that by down by the airport.
Yes,
And we were more closer to College Park. Um, but yeah, in that whole area. And I loved living in Atlanta.
I did too. I miss
Yeah.
it.
Yes, so do I. I love, just the diversity of
Mhm.
climate and hills and, nature and all that.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
but I'm good.
Yeah. I like it here. This is where, spirit wants me. So I'm learning a lot but I do miss the greenery.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
miss that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there anything else that you would like to add or discuss that perhaps we didn't touch on today?
Oh gosh, yes. I say yes, not really knowing what I'm going to say out loud.
I love it.
Oh, yeah, to tune in, what I want to say to your audience is to tune in to your own inner knowing.
Mm,
That's what this new age is all about.
yeah.
We're in the age of Aquarius, who's the water bearer, and it's about our knowledge being poured directly into us now. So we're at a point where we have access to everything.
Mm,
Access. So you want to, take time each day to be quiet, to be still, to get off your phones, to commune with your own inner knowing. Doesn't matter what religion you practice,
yeah.
but to connect to that God inside.
Yes.
Because that's what's going to bring you a feeling, rewarding, happy, joy-filled life,
Yes.
is following that internal guidance.
Yes.
So yeah, that's what I want to say.
That's beautiful. What is the best way for our listeners to contact you?
Through my website, it's sandrajoneskeller.com. I've got tons of videos on my YouTube channel that connect to that. People can get a better idea of my energy work, my intuitive pregnancy coaching, my new age kid parenting support. They can contact me. My email is on there. So through my website, and I've got some fun articles and stuff. And all my stuff is from kind of a spiritual slant, even though it may seem like it's starting here.
Yeah.
It leads to like what I've learned or seen or
Yeah.
became aware of.
Thank you so much for blessing our podcast with this
Oh, thank
episode.
you. Thank you
And
for having me.
I was so excited, and it was everything that I expected.
Oh, thank you. I can't wait. I can't wait to meet you and to be in your presence.
Yes, we have to. I told Thomas, let me know as soon as you guys plan it.
Yeah, we plan stuff and we leave room for spontaneity.
Yeah.
So we may just like say, one day, oh, we'll be out that way. You never know.
Well,
You
thank
never
you so
know.
much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for listening. Please visit the website at www.leveluptribes.com. And please subscribe to the podcast and share with your family and friends. Be sure to tune in to our next episode. Catch you all next time, my beloved tribes.